Up the street in Rockport is where I was collaborating with someone whose ancestry was from. We had lived in Los Angeles for quite some time, and we had collaborated on a story. After starring as Star Trek's Commander Riker, Jonathan Frakes' career took a dramatic turn. Upon the failure of his 2004 film Thunderbirds to meet box office expectations, Hollywood promptly banned him. Calls to studios ceased, things needed to be disposed of. In order to keep things afloat, his wife opened a store. He called it Movie Jail, and for nearly 2 decades after that, he stayed out of the film industry. However, the subsequent events reveal a comeback tale that Hollywood attempted to conceal. On August 19, 1952, Jonathan Frakes entered this world in a modest Belfort, Pennsylvania hospital. All of their offspring were born in Belfort, even though they resided in State College. There was this one occasion when even Penn State professors came to see Jonathan, and it wasn't simply to see the baby. Also, whereas State College lacked any kind of liquor store, Belfort had plenty. James, his father, was an eminent English professor, and Doris, his mother, was a dedicated educator. When Jonathan was 5 years old, his family uprooted and settled in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, where his dad took a job at Lehigh University. As children, Jonathan and his brother Daniel spent a lot of time there. It was tragic that Daniel passed away in 1997 from pancreatic cancer. In 4th grade, Jonathan received a trombone. He did not choose it. Those were his lengthy arms. That random decision, though, cemented my lifelong love of music. Following his father's instruction, Jonathan became proficient in jazz in no time. When he joined the Grenadier Band at Liberty High School in Bethlehem, it was quite a scandal. They were the 1970 Festival States champions in both the field and parade competitions in Florida. A city street was even renamed by the mayor in their honor. Jonathan had a wonderful moment. He claimed that the band's halftime performance was more entertaining than the football game itself. After finishing high school, he enrolled at Penn State University to study psychology. That didn't last. During his summer job as an usher, he was approached by the director of the theater about joining the cast for a performance. Jonathan immediately changed his major to theater arts after witnessing the players' joy on the field. His life was forever altered by that, and he proceeded to mock the notion that a degree in theater might not be particularly practical. At Penn State, he joined the Thespians and was a regular performer in their productions. Though he seldom slept, he adored it. In 1974, after earning his BFA, Jonathan decided to further his education by attending Harvard. After getting into the Loeb Drama Center's professional acting program, he spent his summers performing with actual theater companies. He mentioned that it was an establishment where students could be employed as temporary workers. The year was demanding, but he learned a lot from the more seasoned players and directors he worked with. He was prepared to go pro thanks to his combination of training and experience. In 1974, Jonathan Frakes received a degree in theater arts from Penn State. He joined the ranks of aspiring actors who have made the journey to the Big Apple. Unfortunately, New York was no help. On one occasion, he hurt his back while moving furniture and waiting tables. A brief appearance in The Hairy Ape by Eugene O'Neill was his acting job. The Impossible Ragtime Theater also featured him in minor roles. In 1976, he achieved Broadway success with the show Shenandoah. Although it was one of his more peculiar jobs, he represented Marvel Comics at conventions as Captain America. Although it was unpleasant, he learned valuable social skills that were useful for a long time afterwards. That year, 1977, he finally broke through. He landed the role of Vietnam War veteran Tom Carroll on the NBC daytime drama The Doctors. The job didn't endure, but he did get regular payments for a while. After he had written out his part, his agent suggested he give Los Angeles a shot. Once again, he loaded up and headed west in 1978. That's when things started to shift, albeit gradually. He didn't become famous overnight, but he had more television appearance opportunities after relocating to Los Angeles. He appeared as a guest star on hit television shows such as The Dukes of Hazzard, Fantasy Island, The Waltons, Quincy, and Me. These weren't huge roles, but they helped him break out. As he went to auditions, he would learn the ropes and demonstrate his abilities one by one. It wasn't until 1979 that he landed a role in the TV movie Beach Patrol. It was supposed to kick off a new series, but that never materialized. Here we go again, starring Aaron Spelling, Robin Strand, and Christy Dion. The film was produced by A-listers. Not even the A-listers could rescue it. Just like a lot of Hollywood stars, Frakes had a string of unproduced pilots. He continued to work on it, but he couldn't see the breakthrough coming. It was 1983 when he believed he had finally discovered it. Bare Essence, a primetime soap opera on NBC, was based on a hit drama and featured him. It didn't take long for the show to be canceled due to the crowd's lack of concern for the significant risk. Even though bad luck persisted, this time it had a positive outcome. He first laid eyes on her on that set. They initially had a tense relationship. He teased her about her hair, but their misfortune was far from over. 2 years after their initial encounter, they crossed paths once more in 1985 while filming the massive Civil War film North and South. They spent 6 months filming across the American South, and finally, it paid off. The next major section of Frakes' work began at the same time as their relationship did. Frakes was outstanding as Stanley Hazard, and North and South was well received by audiences. He was starting to get noticed now. After that, 1987 arrived. A new science fiction series was Frakes' big break, according to Jeannie and her family. Over the course of 6 weeks, he auditioned 7 times before they cast him. Star Trek The Next Generation's Captain William Riker was his role. Everything shifted at that moment. Shows had been canceled and pilots had been lost for years because of how badly things were going. Despite being engaged, he and Jeannie had to postpone the wedding twice due to his work schedule. However, they achieved it. Their wedding took place on May 28, 1988, during the show's first commercial break. While many actors were considered for the role of Commander William Riker in 1987, Jonathan Frakes was not one of them. Getting it was a challenge for him. It could have been Jeffrey Combs, William Campbell, or Michael O'Gorman. Gene Roddenberry, creator of Star Trek, stepped in when the company was about to hire someone else. Frakes was intriguing to him, maybe a part of himself. He didn't merely offer his silent support. He made phone calls. Frakes put in a lot of time and effort to get the part. Despite the passage of time, Frakes claimed that Roddenberry confided in him, that he recognized a part of himself in Riker, probably far more. The Riker maneuver was an invention that Frakes made up on the spot while he was a guest on the show. The goal was not for it to appear cool. He sat improperly due to the low and uncomfortable chairs on set. A leg swung over the chair's back instead. That was daring, perhaps even too daring. Frakes made light of the fact that the move may have appeared daring, but the fans adored it. Things took a turn for the better. He replicated Jack Quaid's action in Lower Decks when the latter mounted a horse and shouted Riker after him. Also present, though more concerned with fighting technique, is the Riker Minerva from Insurrection. When the Best of Both Worlds was playing, the audience wasn't expecting anything to happen. Jonathan Frakes, in his role as Riker, had evolved into more than simply the composed lieutenant. Elizabeth Dennehy played Commander Shelby, and he was up against someone as intelligent as him. As a pair, they appeared anxious. The skipper furrowed his brow. Shelby worked harder. It was well received even after all these years. When the shows were screened in theaters, many people still remembered them. The cue wasn't only humorous. When Shelby challenged Riker in the lift, someone even shouted, "Read it, girl," because of it. It was obvious that they were getting along famously. The crowd perceived it. Riker and Shelby becoming captain and staff officer, respectively, started to seem like a plausible plot point to some viewers. What could have been was something you pondered. There was more to it than that. The audience saw a new side of Riker. The big chair made him question his readiness. However, Star Trek did have its share of humorous moments. Something intriguing was once told to me by Jonathan Frakes. Gene Roddenberry instructed him not to smile, he claimed. It was ridiculous. Frakes later claimed that he found the whole thing funny. When I was cast, they warned me not to smile afterwards, but the truth is that the set was full of jokes. The group was constantly hysterical, lively, and loud. That was also something that Frakes, Patrick Stewart, and Brent Spiner hoped to incorporate into the picture. They aspired to be as charismatic as Bones, Spock, and Kirk. Their actions went beyond mere word delivery. The two of them teased one another. I was really unnerved by them. Both of them enjoyed themselves. You could sense that connection in every show. It was a serious matter. It was clear from their personalities that they had a genuine connection. The producers didn't take Jonathan Frakes seriously when he initially asked to direct an episode of Star Trek The Next Generation. The showrunner, Rick Berman, didn't explicitly say no, but Frakes could tell from his facial expressions, but his expression remained one of skepticism. Instead of resorting to verbal abuse, he got down to business. For months, he labored over it. His schedule was packed with as many pre-production meetings, casting calls, and editing rooms, eating up nearly 300 hours of his time. Subsequently, he presented a 47-page report. He painstakingly created storyboards by hand, meticulously set up the cameras, and dissected the characters. This document was dubbed the Riker Directive. When Berman examined it for the first time, he noticed a difference. Frakes was not merely requested to be shot. From scratch, he created his own opportunity. The Offspring, his debut series, dealt with the touching topic of Data creating an android daughter. I didn't find it easy. While continuing to play the role of Commander Riker, Frakes was required to simultaneously direct and act. While wearing his Starfleet outfit underneath a director's jacket, he dashed from behind the camera to in front of it. For each scene, he put in 18-hour days. The sleep deprivation was worthwhile. Premiering in March 1990, the show was widely considered to be among the best in the entire series. Frakes was still dissatisfied with his performance in the show. He specifically requested that the editors cut down on certain scenes in his work. He was so devoted to his role as director. His final statement was, "I like it more, and I'm better at directing than acting." However, not everyone immediately trusted him. When one of the group members took charge, the others floundered. Outside of work, Patrick Stewart was a pleasant person, but he doubted that actors could effectively direct one another. On that fateful morning, Marina Sirtis avoided making eye contact with him entirely. Because of the show's romantic plot, she was worried that things would get awkward. Brent Spiner, who played Data, was given additional lines to further flesh out his character. However, Frakes handled every detail. He was modest. He wanted to succeed. He was quite receptive. Before the second day came to a close, Stewart had reconsidered. Sirtis joined him in laughing again. Spiner carefully stashed his notes away. Frakes' actions were becoming apparent to the entire cast. Even for this, he had plans. They failed to grasp his concept of stealth directing. Whenever he was cast as Riker, he would arrive at the set 30 minutes before the scheduled time to ensure that all elements were prepared. He had shot lists prepared beforehand. He had previously discussed the matter with the cameraman. While the rest of the crew took lunch breaks, he hid out in the editing room and watched old footage. Dude, that wasn't asked of him. He accomplished it at this very moment, without coming across as boastful. He did that to maintain order. Plus, Frakes possessed an unconventional method of interacting with the camera. He and the show's production supervisor, Marvin Rush, would hit a dive bar named the Warp Core after filming Wrapped. As they sipped Macallan 18 all night long, Rush would show him the ropes of filmmaking using bar napkins. As I sipped my drink and sketched, I meticulously planned the placement of lights, angles, and design. Frakes preserved them for an extended period. His office still has 13 of them framed. When Paramount needed a director for Star Trek First Contact, he wasn't their top pick. Notable individuals such as Ridley Scott and John McTiernan had previously declined. However, when it came to Star Trek, Frakes was an expert. Mood, people, and the world were all under his control. Paramount hired him for that reason. It took Frakes 10 weeks to prepare and 12 weeks to shoot. It took him just 7 days to prepare for each step when he was on TV. He felt this to be a significant shift. Among the films he viewed were 2001: A Space Odyssey, Jaws, and Close Encounters. The films of Ridley Scott and James Cameron were even considered by him. He knew how stressful it was. Beyond television, it had evolved into something considerably more. A sea change occurred with the creation of the Borg Queen. The writers originally intended for the Borg to remain a mindless horde, but Paramount boss Jonathan Dolan insisted that the film require a genuine antagonist, someone the characters could converse with. At that moment, the Borg Queen had an epiphany. She was difficult to cast. They were in search of an intriguing, daring, and potentially dangerous individual. According to Frakes, that individual was Alice Krieg. The role was perfect for her. A long time was spent crafting her appearance: pale skin, wire hair, and an unusually long head. The image that stuck with me the most from the film was the one where she enters with her upper body lowered and linked to her spine. It took ILM 5 months to create that shot. There was no such thing as a small screen in First Contact. After Borg, it took 5 hours instead of 1 to make up. It was already 90 minutes short because getting dressed took 30 more. They required 50 talents, but they only had 40. The makeup deteriorated throughout the film, with more and more wires and goo added. It seemed like the Borg were leaking oil, thus they were frightening. Krieg appeared to be soaring through the air in the Queen scene thanks to a blue suit and some clever digital effects. On a rig she was lowered, a bold step that yielded positive results. First Contact was well received. It was well received by both critics and fans. According to Patrick Stewart, it was the most aesthetically pleasing Star Trek film to date. After Star Trek Insurrection, Frakes directed the short-lived sequel. Not as good was the follow-up. Opinions were divided. Nothing seemed to happen in the story. Stewart went on to say that even Nemesis, which Frakes was involved with directing, had better moments. Frakes' progress slowed down due to the setback. The 2004 release of Thunderbirds followed, an ambitious show that aims high. It was made possible by a well-known name, a strong cast, including Bill Paxton and Ben Kingsley, and a good budget. However, the film was a complete financial bust. Criticism was overwhelmingly negative. Nobody showed up. No one contacted Frakes again following Thunderbirds, he claimed afterwards. It was referred to as movie jail. He was compelled to sell an assortment of items. From London, he traveled to Maine. In order to keep things afloat, his wife opened a store. A new beginning. He hasn't helmed a feature film since then. We're talking over 2 decades here. He persisted, though. Once again, he flipped on the TV, this time to Star Trek. Returning to familiar territory, he resumed his career. Among his many credits are episodes of The Librarians and more recent Star Trek series, which he also directed. He remarked, "TV turned into a place where you can work and no one will know who directed it." The show wasn't particularly entertaining, but it was consistently reliable. Jonathan Frakes was not planning on falling in love while filming. On the Civil War drama North and South, set in 1985, he was merely performing his job. Although he was not famous, he was 32 years old. Jeannie Francis arrived at this point. She became famous overnight after collaborating with Patrick Swayze and Leslie Ann Down. The level of professionalism was evident right from the beginning. Something shifted, though, while filming in Natchez and Charleston. They spent Memorial Day weekend in New Orleans together. At that moment, it all clicked. Their prior encounter made it all the more amusing. Frakes didn't think she was old enough to be an employee on the set of Bare Essence. the reality show that didn't last long. They were in their 20s, he was nearly 30. However, that was the wrong moment. They were given a second opportunity by North and South, and this time it was successful. For some reason, Frakes insists on saying she took a chance on me in some way. I fail to understand why she would be interested in going out with me. They tied the knot on May 28, 1988. It has been over 38 years since then. In the world of Hollywood, that's a huge chunk of time. The inclusion of Jeannie in Star Trek was optional, so she was not. Perhaps you are already familiar with her. With more than 890 appearances under her belt, she has been playing General Hospital's Laura Collins since 1977. In their first encounter, she stole the show. Frakes gained his own spotlight the moment he took over as Commander Riker on Star Trek The Next Generation. Their support for one another was unwavering. She often recalls the days of filming soap operas when she had to endure 30 pages of dialogue, when Frakes would run lines with her. In all, they produced 2 offspring. Their daughter Eliza is now mimicking their behavior and writing. Despite his many accomplishments, Frakes has suffered a significant loss. His brother Daniel passed away in 1997 from pancreatic cancer. He was in his early 40s. It happened 1 week prior to Frakes' daughter's birth. Daniel was more than just a sibling. He had been his soulmate. They traveled to New York in a beat-up 1967 Chevy Sport van side by side. Though cramped, their ambitions were lofty. After diagnosing Daniel's condition, doctors attempted a major operation known as the Whipple procedure. However, its size had become excessive. They silenced him once more. There was no hope, they said, and maybe 6 months remained. Only 4% of those who had pancreatic cancer were still with us back then. Despite his broken heart, Frakes refused to let his grief consume him. Throughout his 25 years of service with PanCAN, the Pancreatic Cancer Action Network, he has tirelessly sought to raise awareness about the disease and advocate for improved outcomes. His intention shifted from remaining hidden to becoming known. Along with other Star Trek actors, he established Trek Against Pancreatic Cancer in 2022. John Billingsley, Armin Shimerman, and Kitty Swink, who had endured it for 18 years, embarked on a mission to walk for a cause. As part of the annual PanCAN Purple Stride event that takes place on April 29, they will be walking in 60 towns across the nation. The Santa Monica Pier is usually where Frakes begins his. Lots of money has been raised for research and assistance by their group. Progress is being made as a result of efforts such as these. The survival rate has gradually increased from 4% to approximately 11-12%. Marked improvement over the previous state. The PanCAN Research Fund has amassed $174 million, 0 cents, over the years. They only contributed $10.00 in 2022. $5 million for research, as a portion of a record-breaking $25 million, 0 cents in revenue for the year. For those who have a family history of pancreatic cancer, Frakes stresses the need of early detection. He is aware of the time it takes to do it. This is the driving force behind his incessant verbal and physical output. Jonathan Frakes stepped away from film acting after 2004's Thunderbirds bombed at the box office. The film's budget was about $57 million, 0 cents. Critics were not fond of it. Nobody paid attention to it. In Hollywood, it abandoned him. Hollywood was scared to collaborate with the man behind one of the worst films of the 2000s. His name began to dwindle off of director job shortlists. By 2006, he was left with no option but to seek out alternatives. He resumed directing television series, sparsely attended events. He was hired by Nick Jr. shows like True Jackson, VP, and Zoe 101. Although some suspected he might adopt a false identity, he refrained from doing so. For every little thing, he used his real name. His condition was gradually improving. The year 2010 marked a shift. Castle and NCIS Los Angeles both approached him to direct episodes. Both were major network television series. He had returned to the fray. He had shaken off his reputation as the director of financially unsuccessful films. Only he remained and persisted. The term science fiction handyman started to stick after that. 17 separate science fiction and fantasy series were under his supervision, and they were all either struggling or still getting to know each other. Orphan Black, Roswell, The Librarians, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., and House 13 were among his credits. When resources were limited and plans were disorganized, they contacted Frakes. Order was restored by him. He increased the pace. Thanks to him, it was successful. More than 100 television series were under his direction as of 2016. The rumors started after that. On the job, he was known as the genre whisperer. He kept a low profile. Although he was quiet, he was effective. He had a knack for injecting energy, intrigue, and fun into shows that typically lacked those elements. Even when he returned in 2018, it appeared as though he was about to stage a genuine comeback. A second season of Beyond Belief Fact or Fiction was renewed by CBS. Frakes was going to do more than just host, he was going to direct each show. There was joy for those who enjoyed the previous program. They were prepared. Then CBS halted production 3 days prior to the start of filming. It's done. They claimed that there were incongruities in terms of creativity. Time seemed to stand still. The initial release of Beyond Belief was likewise plagued by numerous issues. Fox continued to change its time slots. After a 2-year hiatus, it was finally scrapped. The reboot was already ineffective before it even started. But Frakes kept going. He returned the show to Germany in the year 2021. X Factor Das Unfassbare was the title. Hangar 9 was the location where the shots were fired. Again, he was the host. Strange tales told by the same chilling voice, urging listeners to decide for themselves what was real across multiple networks and countries.